Who?
My two adults.
Very good. And how about these guys?
Welcome to the first episode of the Movies About Movies podcast. I am one of your hosts, David McLaughlin. With me, I hope as always, is Mario from Boston. My background, I went to film school. That doesn't mean I'm qualified to talk about movies, but what I have noticed and what Mario, I believe, has also noticed is that so many movies are just about the movie industry. I even did a vertical video about this phenomenon back in, I believe, 2020. I'll show it here. The movie industry is so cannibalistic. There's an entire genre of film about making famous movies. We've seen this recently in movies like Saving Mr. Banks, The Disaster Artist, and Dolomite Is My Name. But then there are movies that are about cinema over a period of time. Movies like Boogie Nights, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and The Artist. Then there are movies that are biopics of directors, like Ed Wood, The Aviator, and Hitchcock. Then there are movies that are a parody of the industry, like Tropic Thunder, The Stuntman, and Be Kind, Rewind. My lead off for why we picked Singing in the Rain as the first episode. Do you have any theories on why I chose it?
It's the first movie to make a movie about making movies. And in this case, it's one about a movie that's also a musical about breaking out into Hollywood. So just really super meta for its time.
I really did it because the entire entertainment industry is about performance, right? So it's like taking you back to old Broadway shows, and I thought Singing in the Rain, it's not the first movie about a movie, but it's one of the earliest. So it's like kind of the overture for this whole podcast because I felt like it was the most in tone with what we're doing. But I think a good way to intro into the movie a little bit more is sort of share like maybe your favorite quote, favorite line, anything that sort of pops out to you. I'm happy to go first if you need some time to think.
I already know what yours is, and I think it's the best one there. But I think the best, like the most one that spoke to me because of how well he said it was when Gene Kelley was kissing Lena Lamont. And he was just saying, like, I would rather kiss a tarantula than kiss you. And then she's like, oh, you don't mean that. And just the way he said it, it was just perfect. He was like, I wouldn't... Hey, John, go get me a tarantula. It's like he broke character and he was wicked serious. Like, nah, dude, go get me one right now. I thought that was great.
I agree. It's very hard to be the straight man in a movie like this. And I feel like that was probably the only line he had that, I mean, just was funny.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I think Cosmo Brown is probably the role most actors would actually want just because he gets to pretty much heckle the entire movie in the background.
I hate that part. Oh, actually, he might make this the second best quote, in my opinion, is when they were trying to come up with the name for the new, for the newly vamped Dancing Cavalier, and because the jazz singer came out, which I googled and I researched, and I'm like, oh, that's what it is. His idea was, let's call it the dueling mammy. And I didn't get it the first couple times, but then once I discovered that, I thought, wow, that's actually pretty funny. That's hilarious. I mean, it's racist. It's hilarious. It's good.
That's so funny. That went completely over my head. It's because I don't watch the movie with captions on. I never made out what he said.
See, that's when I made it out when I put on subtitles the last few times, and I caught caught it, and I'm like, what is that? I need to like Google it, and yeah.
I picked a line. It happens pretty early in the movie, in the first like 15 minutes,
Yeah,
but it just felt so of this time period for comedy.
for sure. Yeah.
A girl in the audience sees someone on screen she's jealous of, and she says she's so refined, I think I'll kill myself.
So good. That's just a great line. Another time that really stuck out to me, line of dialogue, is when they're just Cosmo and Dawn are just like in the movie sets, just seeing how movies are being made, and the scene just gets introduced with this guy in blackface in like a tribal suit, and I don't remember who says what, but I think Dawn goes like, "Oh hey Joe," the guy goes, "Oh hey Dawn." Is this the way they delivered those lines? I guess those that really stuck to me.
Right, because he walks by like 3 different sets, because without sound, you could make movies in a more assembly line fashion where they're happening next to each other.
Right, right.
That white dude dressed as an indigenous person, when they were talking about the jazz singer, he even said, it'll never make it.
Oh really?
Yeah, so
He was just hating.
exactly.
What a hater. There's a part in the movie where they're showing the first take of the Dancing Cavalier, and it's just terrible. And someone in the audience just shouts out, like, "Who's paid to write this dialogue?" or something like that.
What I really loved about that moment, because that was in reference to when, what's his name? Gene Kelly's main character, Don Lockwood. When Don Lockwood's kissing Lena Lamont's arm and he's saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. And he didn't want to do the original line. So as a writer, I felt such sympathy for whoever the screenwriter was who took that indirect shot because an actor decided, no, I'm throwing away the script. I know how this character should be done. Something funny, just because of how like a fine-tuned machine the New York Times is, or at least how they present. The author was talking about the songs in the film. He's seeing it for the first time, right? So these songs have no cultural impact. But he ends up calling the song Make 'Em Laugh, Make Me Laugh. And he doesn't even have autocorrect to blame for that.
That's right. What's it called?
Well, the song is called Make 'Em Laugh.
Oh, you know what? It's funny because, not to get too off track, but, I have a show that I watch in darkness that I don't really share with people usually. But after watching this movie 6 times or so, I was watching Frasier for the millionth time. And I noticed that in one of the late seasons, who else appears but Donald O'Connor, Cosmo? I was blown away. The way they introduced him, he goes down a fireman pole. He's like an eccentric millionaire who's slowly going crazy. Anyway, I just thought that was really, really cool and funny, and probably his second best role ever. is that guest appearance in Frasier.
An 80-year-old Donald O'Connor was going down a fireman's pole?
Yeah, I think he did it a couple times too.
That is wild. You have to upload a screenshot of that so I can include it in the video.
I'll put it up there. It's glorious. I was so happy to see that. I thought it was I don't know. I thought is this the Twilight Zone? Is this real? But this is actually the dude.
And what's crazy too is that he was able to do that at his age.
I know.
I was trying to keep count of all of the times his knees hit the ground, and only the times where it made it into the final cut. So that doesn't attribute to all the times that, he did it and then the take was garbage, the sound was bad, or they didn't like how the lines were delivered. I made it a half hour into the movie. I had 6 times his knees hitting the ground, and then he goes behind a couch, and then that number gets flipped to infinity.
Right, during the Make 'Em Laugh one, yeah. That is intense. So much energy in one person.
You had mentioned to me earlier, you didn't find that song funny.
No, not at all. I thought it was what he was doing was cool. I thought that was insanely well choreographed, and painful. appreciate him trying though. I really do.
That song is very funny if you think that he was just trying to make a baby laugh. At the end of that, they just cut to a baby that looks like arms crossed, unamused.
That would have been awesome. They should have done that.
Who do you think the villain in this movie is?
I mean, I really feel like it's the movie company. You know, it's the owner of the whole thing.
R.F. Simpson, the owner of the studio?
Yeah, I think it's him. I think he's the evil guy of the whole thing. But in reality, it's just times is changing, and they had to adapt and adapt fast. You know what I mean? So I mean, if you want to say it's just maybe time is the enemy, who knows? But I think it's the movie production company, if anything, man.
And I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it sort of seems like if you're saying all of these decisions, right, the decision to switch to sound, the decision to shut down the movie, the casting choices were ultimately made by RF, the head of the movie studio. So, in essence, he is sort of pinning them against each other, and that's the real enemy.
Yup. Thank you for being so succinct. That's exactly it.
That's not the take I was going for, but I think maybe you're just in that the brain meme. I feel like I'm panel 3 and you're panel 4.
Yeah. Okay. So what's your take?
I think the movie wants you clearly to believe Lena Lockwood.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
no, not Lena Lockwood. Sorry, Lena Lamont
Yeah. Come on.
is the villain.
I agree.
But I was thinking the real villain might actually be the director Dexter.
The really mean guy. He was really abusive to Lena Lamont, man. She when they're learning their lines and they're learning new technology essentially. They're adapting to totally new technology in a span of minutes because who knows how much this costs to, run this for however many minutes. And he just does not relent on her. He's just so cruel.
He was immediately impatient.
Yeah.
They've never had sound before, and he's explaining the sound process like that's going to fix the learning curve.
Right.
But I guess the decision to hire Dexter was made by RF, so I'm trying to still find the mold where you're correct and I can be correct, but...
Well, he didn't have to be a dickhead.
He didn't.
So you're still right in that. I mean, he was really hard on her, and I can't really think of any parts where he's ever like that standoffish to Dawn. Not that much, anyway.
Well, it's funny you say that, because on the 5th watch through, I realized that Dawn got his start through Dexter.
Oh, that's right.
But that director was knocking out stuntmen left and right.
Yeah, that's right. He's just got a history of abuse.
So, I mean, RF is a monster for letting Dexter rain fire down on all the entertainment industry. Like, all these actors, all these stuntmen, all these actresses.
They're just running through all of these people, just trying to get their break in Hollywood, and he's just destroying dreams and bodies.
He's just creating hostile work environment after hostile work environment. And he must love it because he keeps doing it.
Maybe he's taking the Whiplash route, where you remember the teacher in Whiplash is super
Oh, of course.
abusive because he wants, to have the guy, the student, the next, legend. Maybe this is what this director is doing in creating this type of environment. And then that's what he got. He got Gene Kelley out of it. He got one that stuck, and that happened to be Cosmo and Dawn, and eventually Lena. And I'm just being devil's advocate for the movie studio, but no, you're absolutely right. That dude was a total dickhead. But the one who hired him is the, ultimate dickhead, because he just let that shit fly. He thought, all these people being, just like getting their bodies destroyed every day on the daily, hiring new people, that's normal, that's fine.
In just like the broad stroke of the story, Lena Lamont gets just treated the worst. They never gave her a chance to speak from the very beginning. So like she was never able to establish with her audience that she had the voice that she did. And knowing what we do about sort of actresses in the star system, I think there would be like almost like an endearing quality to her city accent.
Yeah, for sure. They could have catered to her. They could have catered to her story and made something more, super New York based or something like that. That would help her out. But they never gave her a chance, man. Poor Lena. And she turned out to be a bitch too, though. She tried to get someone fired. I mean, she did. She did get someone fired.
But she got pied in the face at a work event.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? You got
Like in her shoes.
by your coworkers, in front of your coworkers, by this like underling, essentially.
I mean, Kathy collected a paycheck, a very small paycheck for that. But in her eyes, she just got paid to throw a whipped cream pie in her face. I mean, if you want to at least give her like this sort of the benefit of the doubt there, she is guilty of being delusional.
That's yeah, for sure, for sure.
But it's the entertainment industry. Name me an actor, name me a comic who isn't delusional on some aspect.
Well, her delusion very quickly, or at least by the end of the movie, became like, oh, she's like for real. She has an amazing contract. Where like, right, RF couldn't do shit about her, and I'm like, here's some redemption. Maybe she's gonna do some good. But nah, she's just still being petty and stuff, and so that contract is still ironclad though. So I don't know why she shouldn't be that mad.
That's the bad press that she got afterwards in those tabloids. And then the announcement that Don Lockwood is dating her replacement.
Worth it, man. Some of their songs are really so fucking catchy. Definitely not make them laugh, but something like, obviously Singing in the Rain or Good Morning especially, man. Like that's such an earworm song to me. And I remember hearing it a few times when I was a kid. Once is when I saw The Simpsons. No, that's Singing in the Rain. That's when Willie was singing in the Rain. But when I was obsessed with the 2000 Toby Maguire. No, not Toby Maguire. What's his name? The guy who murdered an Irish woman while he was driving there.
Matthew Broderick?
That's it, yes. He was in the Godzilla movie. And I remember him just going, singing in the rain, like introing to the song, I'm singing in the rain.
That is extra fitting, right? Because Singing in the Rain is just making good of a bad situation.
It's funny that you say that because in Clockwork Orange, that's not the case. But well, at least not for certain characters. But man, that's just the strength of that song. The way you can use it, it's eternal. It's just gonna go on and on and on.
I read the book. I haven't seen the movie in full, but Kubrick paid to have Singing in the Rain featured?
Yeah, I think so. He paid like 10, 15 grand for it. I think like to own it or something like that, and he just got it.
I can't imagine that he gets to own it for 10 or 15. I imagine that has to be a licensing thing.
Maybe, but these are cheap back then. Maybe that's it. Or he had so much clout himself that he was like, you're going to sell this to me for this little because I'm fucking Stanley Kubrick. The dude had such a huge ego. I just feel like that's something he'd do.
He's a regular Lena Lamont.
Yeah, that's right. He had the exact same voice as well.
That's what I look forward to in future episodes, sort of seeing how these characters like fit into other movies, right? Like who's the Lena in the next movie, who's the Don, who's the actor that ends up playing an actor, which actually it's a interesting point, right? Because actors, they want to play someone else. The whole thing with like sitcom actors after they have a successful role is that they get typecast into that role. But here we have all these actors playing actors. So you're not acting, you're playing yourself.
That's what I'm saying. It gets so meta. It's one of the layers of its meta-ness.
It just seems so strange. And I'm not sure if it's as fun to be an actor playing an actor Or do people just sort of write what they know? And so the screenwriters for these movies, they know that they want to be in the entertainment industry. So what job or what aspiring job do they give their protagonists? But the one that they want to have. But I guess I wonder why writers always pick actors as like the occupation. Like it seems like every friend group, right, in a sitcom has one that wants to be an actor.
That's right. Huh. Is it a trope?
I mean, at this point, it's just like, can people have other interests? Can there be like one delusional guy who hits the gym because he still thinks he has a shot?
Maybe it's just something they typecast to an actor and they're just like, go wild, make it your own so that we don't have to write for you.
Yeah, I guess it's so easy. It's so easy to just give them one big win and then also to just make them a failure forever.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you got this commercial and it's going to air on TV and that's your big win. But then you're not going to get any of these TV shows or movie roles you're expecting.
I mean, if that was me, I get paid to do 30-second commercials instead of a terrible-ass sitcom. Hell yeah, dude. Sign me up for life. I want to be the Statefarmer guy.
Actually, give your best shot. Like a good neighbor?
Like a good neighbor, Statefarm is there. No,
Oh, man.
Give me a bottle of whiskey and I'll get there. I gotta sound more hoarse.
Do you see how tough it is to self-tape?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what I learned about Gene Kelly in the intro of the movie when he's describing, you know, his rise into fame, and he'd say dignity, always dignity, and transitions into lying about his history, saying I was taught in like the best schools because my parents cared about me, which in reality that was true. His mom put him into dancing classes when he was young because she knew that he would have like she just knew that he was gifted in that. In the movie, he's like this poor pauper kid with his brother, just like dancing in front of like people to make money. I learned too that Gene Kelly, like, because he lived during the Depression, basically stopped going to college because he just couldn't afford it anymore. And he'd do what the movie was doing, portraying, was him like dancing, like for people in bars and stuff for money, you know, to feed his family and himself. So there's a lot of love, I think. You know, this movie meant a lot to Gene Kelly, I think.
That makes sense too because he did direct it as well.
Yeah, he really had a vision. He really had a vision, man.
And his vision was make Dexter the villain. What's funny about this movie's like sort of timeline is that it was a Hollywood movie first, and then it was adapted for Broadway in like the 80s, I believe, and then it was like revived again in like 2012. But 42nd Street is a film that was about the making of a musical, and then that also later became a staged Broadway show. So they're both like movie musicals that ended up being adapted for stage.
Okay, for theaters at this point, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's just you see it live sort of another life as well.
Still living on, right.
But it's just fun. A movie about silent films becomes a musical film. Decades later, a Broadway hit with revivals.
In this era of revivals, man, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see this again.
That's a good point you bring up. I was wondering that because you sort of see that already with other films and other pieces of media. So I'm wondering if all these years later, will someone go back and remake The Dancing Cavalier into a real movie, like as it was supposed to be made? Because some of the songs that are organic in the movie do appear in Singing in the Rain, so you would have to have those moments appear perfectly in whatever you remake the script into.
It's such a meta project that someone has to take the mantle and do it.
I feel like what's even greater about that is that The Dancing Cavalier, in their own words, the hero is a young hoofer in a Broadway show. Now he sings and he dances. One night backstage, he's reading A Tale of Two Cities, and in between numbers, a sandbag falls and hits him on the head, and he dreams he's back during the French Revolution.
That's right. I'm remembering Cosmo explained this to the movie owner guy. And I just thought, this is how it's made. This back then. It's just crazy ideas like this on the fly.
But what's crazy is that they actually did remake that We could review that movie on a future episode.
The time is a flat circle, man. You always go back to the originals at some point.
That's true, man. And we're not really a movie review podcast at this point. This movie's been out since the 50s. If you haven't seen it, you're not going to, etc., etc. But with that being said, I think it is always interesting to see what other people think about the movie, and what better place than the people that watch movies. So just taking a quick peek at sort of the IMDb page, we don't really care about the critics and whatever they give a movie. Who cares? But out of 242,000 user reviews, Singing in the Rain got an 8.3 out of 10.
That's surprising. I would have thought it would have gotten like closer to a 9.5.
Yeah, right. Also, like, a lot of these older movies sort of have the advantage that people are going to look up more beloved movies and give them a high rating as opposed to new movies that are released today. So any movie that's like a certain year old, I think inherently is going to have an advantage. But even still, that's not a number in the nines at all. 8.3 is definitely a solid number. I don't think we're going to see too many reach that high.
I don't think that's fair though, because that's closer to like a high 7. And with how much these actors sacrifice their bodies, like the choreography, man, is just next level stuff. I know nothing about dancing, but I know that Gene Kelly mixed it up because it wasn't all just like the tip tapping and flat foot dancing, Irish steps type of stuff. Like he got kind of modern dancey in it too.
Right. I think movies like this, like, there's not an awful lot that happens to the characters themselves, right? Because a lot happens to the movie industry, right? They go from no sound to complete sound. But I don't think Don Lockwood changes that much. I don't think Cosmo Brown changes at all. I don't think Lena Lamont really changes. She gets knocked off her pedestal. But I don't think she becomes a different person after. And then Kathy Selden gets rocketed to stardom.
Yeah, there's not much of an arc for anyone.
So I think that, it's right to not have like a 9 or 10.
Yeah, that's a
But
good point.
what are the purpose of them, right? This was a satire, so it was meant to entertain and make you laugh. Did it do that?
It entertained. If for sure it entertained, and it had some parts where I definitely laughed. Probably not why they wanted me to laugh, but I thought it was a really entertaining movie, man. I really appreciated it. And the people who made it, man. A lot of heart. You can just see it. It's dripping.
I felt like I appreciated it more as I went on. Like the first 2 watch throughs, I felt like the movie dragged on. But by like 3 or 4, I'm like, I feel like this is pretty tight. I think if we trim some of the dancing sequences, which I know like that was probably the big selling point to some viewers, but just in terms of anything that moves the story forward, I think some of the dancing sequences didn't. So if you were to trim those, I think this movie could have been like an hour 15.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
So I feel like in sort of conclusion of Singing in the Rain as we wrap this up, it's well done, it's satire, it's meta, but not much happens.
I would agree. It's timeless. Super meta for its time. I think even for today, man, it's a real. They got some really great tongue-in-cheek moments.
I mean, that's why we wanted this one first, because Movies About Movies is clearly a somewhat meta podcast. The first episode has to be the most meta version of a movie about movie.
It's bare bones, but it covers exactly what we wanted to talk about.
And I enjoyed this. I think we'll keep doing it. In fact, the very next movie, we already have it planned out what it's going to be. Mario, do you want to tell them?
The movie we're going to watch is Ed Wood from Tim Burton. Super excited to see that. Johnny Depp in his prime, Tim Burton in his prime. Before he started making Alice in Wonderland, that god-awful mess.
I completely forgot about that movie series.
That was nightmare fuel.
In terms of Ed Wood, have you seen the movie before?
No, I haven't.
Have you seen any of Ed Wood's films?
Nope, but I want to put that on the list before I watch this one, actually. I know I'm going to like it, though. I know it's one of Tim Burton's better movies, so I'm really excited to see it.
and I'm very excited to see it too. And I'm very excited to edit this podcast, and I'll be very excited to edit the next one. I hope you guys will be around to hear it.
Thank you for joining. Hope some of this was interesting, and I hope you join the next episode to listen to us rant a little bit more.
All right, that's a wrap.